Hi, just before I get started on the bulk of the video, I just want to make certain everyone knew about the September 21st draw, and that is going to be for a big box set of Indomitus chosen by our patrons. And so if you want to join in on that, there are three things you have to do. You have to subscribe to our channel, you have to share this video is good. This video to some social media public forum that I'd be able to also see, and I'd also like you to like and comment below saying that you've done the first two things, and comment and say what would your favorite Necron robot paint scheme be if you had one. I'd love to know. What crazy Necrons shall we have out there? And of course, if you're a patron by September 21st, then you can sit back and relax. You need not do anything. You'll be immediately entered into the draw. Hi, I'm Naomi with Sword and Steel, and today I'm going to be painting the three Necrons out of the Necrons and Paints starter set using only the paints that are in the starter set as well as the paintbrush. Alright, so I'm just showing you everything that you have in it, and then I'm assembling the miniatures without using glue to see what it's like to paint the miniatures unglued. Now, I definitely prefer gluing your miniatures, whether they're push fit or not, and I kind of suggest you do the same. I did find out that while I was putting these guys together, even though it says to put on the head last, I definitely suggest attaching the head to the chest and then attaching the chest to the rest of the body. It is much easier to put that head into the chest when it's not attached to the rest of the body. The brush I'm going to use is going to be the starter brush that comes with the set. I'm going to be using that for every paint. So the paints that we have are Rune Lord Brass, Tesseract Glow, Rune Fang Steel, Agrax Earthshade Cloth, Abaddon Black, and Astro Granite. I'm going to paint the first one in the colors that the box suggests. Oh yes, make certain to shake your paints before you use them. They should be one solid color when you open them up. See that? One nice solid color. Maybe 4 drops to cover the entire miniature once. However, this paint isn't quite ready for me. It's a bit too thick, so I'm going to just dilute it a bit. Basically, it's a 2-to-1 ratio of paint to water. And then I'm cleaning out my brush before I start painting it, so I have the exact amount of paint on my brush that I want. And top down, I'm going to paint all of the Necron itself. I'm not going to paint the gun because that's going to go black and Tesseract Glow, but I'm just going to paint all of the Necron in one coat of this Rune Lord Brass. And as you can see, I'm not being particularly careful about it. Now this layer, because it's over the plastic, won't necessarily look so smooth, but when we put on a second layer, which I'll be dry brushing on, it's going to smooth up the appearance of that metal color. And it might not be too visible here, but my brush is sliding up and down this miniature, which really helps to even it out. These are nice quality paints, and if I smooth it up and down as I'm going while the paint is wet, it's too late if it's tacky. You have to leave it be to dry and just do another layer over it. But while this paint is nice and fresh and wet, which the water helps, to put a nice even coat on it. Alright, once that is completely covered, I am going to go ahead and paint the other one. Now, I'm just going to show you that you don't necessarily have to stick to the art. I'm going to try, just for funsies, one that is based in black. I'm going to take about 4 little drops out. I'm going to water that down by adding 2 little brush fills of water. So yeah, I'm going to clean out my brush, and then just as I did with the Rune Lord Brass one, I'm going up, down, just moving my brush across it in an upward downward motion so that it smoothly goes across the model. And this paint is a similar consistency to the Rune Lord brass, and as such it's working the same. Just as the box suggests, I'm going to be painting the gun black. Now I'm skipping the part where its power source is, because that part is going to go Runefang steel, but otherwise I'm giving it a single coat of black. So the last Necron I'm actually going to do mostly Runefang steel. Although this Runefang steel I did find probably could have only used one water. It's not quite the same consistency as the other two colors. As you'll see when it goes on this Necron, it doesn't cover as well as the other two did with a single coat. That's fine. When I do a second coat, it cleans itself up. However, I just keep that in mind for future reference, as that the Runefang steel needs a 3-to-1 mix rather than a 2-to-1 mix. Alright, now this fellow, I decided I would do his gun with the Runefang steel. I'm going to be putting it all over his gun because for this kit, the Tesseract glow has to go over top Runefang steel. Now, I would probably pick up a cream or a yellow as something nice and bright to go underneath Tesseract glow. But as you'll see, the Tesseract glow looks just fine under the over top the Runefang steel. Now for this one, it says the Runefang steel should go over one of these two cables hanging down. So I will follow their instructions and do that, and also over this rod of barrel, I guess, exposed power of the barrel. So the next layer of Rune Lord brass is going to not be watered down because I'm using this as a dry brush of sorts, which means I don't actually want much water involved at all. And as you see, I wiped it off, so there's only a small amount of paint on my brush, and this is going to allow me to buff the metal and make it much smoother than it was before. As you can see, he's starting to get pretty cleanly painted. If the paint were still tacky, instead of it buffing up the metal, it would be removing the metal. So make certain that your Necron is dry so that you don't accidentally start removing the paint job. Now that's not an enormous problem with this Necron. If you accidentally do remove the paint because you were too impatient, you can just put more paint on it or give it a look of wear, particularly when you get to the wash phase. It'll just look like some part of him is rusting away. This brush, though it is a starter brush and is definitely less quality than the higher end brushes you'll be able to get, it is doing a very good job. I have no complaints with it. Normally I would not suggest any starter brushes. Well, of course, certainly not dollar store ones, because they will not give you a good idea of what it is like to paint a miniature, but this starter brush would. I'm content with it. I'll keep it in my little area of brushes. On impulse, I decided I was going to start painting little accents on this black one. I noticed he was just too black, so I had to do something. So I'm just winging the color scheme now, and I decided that his inner parts would be the Rune Lord brass. Kind of like that idea, so any, exposed metal pieces. I'm only dry brushing it on so that the black is still revealed underneath. It gives for like an older metal look if you leave some black showing. Alright, now I think I'm going to make his weapon a bit different. I thought about doing black, but I decided instead I am going to actually make this weapon Rune Lord brass. Let's see what a Rune Lord brass weapon would look like, shall we? I'm gonna need more paint because I only ever take out a very small portion because this paint again goes a very long distance. And now, as you saw, I just watered it down because when I use this as a base paint, I will thin it down. Now, if I were to go over it again, I would use the paint alone, but I want to get it in all the crevices, so I thin it down whenever I'm using it as a base paint, as in applying it directly to the plastic. I am skipping the power source areas, the cords, and that barrel power source. You know the part I'm referring to, I hope. Because that one I'm going to do Runefang Steel, which I should have done at the same time, but these two ones I'm winging it, so I guess I'm figuring it out as I go. Plus I was also considered doing that barrel black, but you know, it being a power source, I inevitably decide to do it Tesseract glow. Now it's time for the second layer of Runefang Steel. And again, this one will not be watered down. It'll be just as is. And as you can see, this is going to really even out the more mottled effect that it originally had. It's going to look nice and smooth. Now I'm going to attempt to put a speck of Runefang Steel into his eye. Now, I kind of want it to be overflowing in his eye because this is supposed to be a glowing effect. So I'm going to get his eye and the spot underneath his eye. I guess his eye socket as well. And because there's a space between the piece of plastic that makes up his eye and the eye socket, it should look like it's glowing when the Tesseract glow is added. However, I definitely added a bit too much silver there with this starter brush, but that's okay, I can always fix it up with black. I fixed it up later with black and it is super easy fix. And this is when I realized that I didn't put the Runefang Steel in his eyes, so I do that to him as well. Now I really shouldn't have, because I realized that the next step is to do a wash over the models, and I'll have to re-add the Runefang Steel once the wash dries. But hey, this is what he looks like now before the wash is applied. So if you don't want to add a wash to him, he can look just like that. The wash is going to age that metal, dirty it a bit perhaps, add shadows. This is how this fellow looks. His eyes are a little bit too bright right now, but don't worry, we'll fix that. As you can see, the Runefang Steel on the weapon is still patchy because it's only one layer. This fellow's Runefang Steel, on the other hand, is much smoother. And if you wanted it smoother again, you just put a third layer of dry brushing on top. Now it's time for the Arax Earthshade Gloss. I'm going to be putting that all over the Runelord brass on this one. I'm going to putting it all over the metal on the black Necron, and I'm also going to be putting it all on the weapon of the silver Necron. You can just grab it right from the bottle, but I'm going to use my palette. And as you can see, I am not going to water it down. In fact, it may not help you at all if you do water it down. I would suggest thinning it down if you wanted a more subtle effect. See the darkness that it is? It's going to be a much darker metal. The more you put on, the darker it's going to be. This is a very liquid paint. It's very easy to work with as long as it's wet, so you can't wait too long. Once it starts getting tacky, if you put your paintbrush to it, you're going to just take it right off again. So make certain you work quickly to apply it to wherever you want to apply it. I'm going to be doing top down because this liquid paint is going to flow downward. So I'm going to be dragging all of it down with me as I move from the top of the model down to the bottom of the model. And again, don't take too long on this stage. You do not want that wash to dry, otherwise you'll get splotches. Right here where I'm applying the gloss to the shoulder blades, the wash has a tendency to pool at the bottom of the shoulder blade, so you want to make certain you take that part off and watch out for pooling. Once you finish your model, you just take a glance around. The pooling is going to start right away, so while it's still wet you can pull away whatever excess shade that you have, and you just use your brush to do it. It'll just pull it away from the model. Now you can do multiple washes over of this miniature to get it darker and darker, but I was content with the one layer of wash. Now, generally speaking, you'd want non-brown wash to go over silver metal, but I'm happy to have this look like a very aged gun. Again, this black Necron has been at it for thousands of years, and he hasn't bothered maintaining his gun that much. And while I have this model, I'm going to be doing a second coat of all of the metal bits that are sticking out of him. Just a little dry brushing. Show it off a bit more. Now, the place I'm going to add the Agrax Earthshade gloss to on the silver model is on his weapon as well, on that rune Lord Brass. So this is going to, and this was only one layer of rune Lord Brass, so again this is going to make it for an aged metal appearance. It's really good to get in those crevices and make them emphasized without much work at all. We're going to add another layer of rune fang steel so that the Tesseract glow comes out even brighter. The brighter the bottom color that's going to be underneath the Tesseract glow, the brighter the Tesseract glow will be. So that is why I'm adding a second layer, so that the Tesseract glow comes out even better. Alright, while that is drying, I'm going to grab my Abaddon black again and touch up areas that I painted over with the metal, so that we again have the armor pieces all in black and just the metallic skeleton basically in the rune Lord Brass color. Just tidying up the black coil here and also adding a second layer of black, as I originally only put the one layer of black on this weapon. I want it to be a nice dark black, so I'm adding a second layer. And now that the rune fang steel is dried, it's time to use Tesseract Glow. This is another liquid paint that I am not going to be adding any water to. It is perfect just as it is, and I'm going to lay it on pretty thickly. Seems to have a nice glow when applied quite thickly. Now it is a transparent paint, and you'll still be able to see the color within it, the color underneath it. But of course that color will be shaded green. There we go. Now I'm cleaning out the brush and grabbing just the smallest amount for his eyes. And as I said, this starter brush is doing just fine for small details. Adding the green to his eyes was not difficult. He's starting to look like the box art, I think. Now again, I did not use, the box art uses black in his little joints. I chose not to do that because I just find this to be a more realistic looking one. So I followed the box art. I chose all the colors where they were, except for the fact that his little arm joints are not black. Same sort of thing. Going to get his eyes, which I'll fix later with black, because I added too much rune fang steel to them. And then also the rod on his gun. And yeah, I'm testing out what it's like to do both of the coils in the green. And also this part back here, which I do not know the name of, but it's that part. That part right there that I'm painting. If you chose to brighten up this Tesseract glow appearance, you could always do this runefang steel, and then you apply runefang steel, and then 1 or 2 lines of white before you add the Tesseract glow, and that will likely bring out the effect. Did I clean up his eyes too much? Maybe. Maybe. But I can always go back and add more. Oh yes, I decided after looking at his Runelord brass it was too bright, and I'm adding the Agrax Earthshake gloss to make it look older, more aged. Alright, must leave him to dry before I pick at him anymore. Now for the silver Necron, I decided, you know what, maybe I'll just go to town and have all of his accents Tesseract glow. Why not see what that looks like? He has part of his head coming off. I decided I would go ahead and make that Tesseract glow. Covered with Tesseract glow. His eyes are going to be covered with Tesseract glow. I decided his mouth he's just like emanating glow. Again, I think I would want to do a black wash over him to emphasize more the dark and light areas. But hey, he looks like a creepy glowing Necron. I'd also probably use white instead of just that runefang steel underneath the Tesseract glow. A white or a bright yellow. But this is what I'm working with. Super glowy Necron. Da-da-da-da-da. It looks like if he grabs you, you might suffer radiation poisoning. Now it is time to let them dry before I do anything else. Or I realize there's some cords that's hanging out from him. In his case, I'm going to make them black cords. Fix up his little gun a little bit, perhaps. And then on him, I realize that I kind of want the gun to be more different than the Necron, so I'm turning these cords black, which separates the gun more from the Necron. Now that the wash on the Runelord Brass Necron is done, I will go ahead and dry brush him another time. However, I decided I would give it kind of like a highlight, so I'm taking the silver and the brass and making a lighter brass color. And this color, I'm going to dry brush onto some of the surfaces that are pointing upward, up towards the sky. That's where I'm going to be adding it. It's just to give a bit of a highlight, and also fix any strange poolings that the wash may have done. Probably an unneeded step. I mean, if you're going to paint 40 Necrons, don't necessarily need to have this step, but I did it anyway, just a little bit of highlighting. Right, they're now dry, and I am now adding the Astro Granite right out of the pot onto our base, and I'm using the back end of the starter brush to do it. I am attempting to only use the materials from the starter kit if I can. So this is using the back of a starter brush. Now, Games Workshop does have a Citadel tool just for applying textures to bases, which does work better than this, but hey, I think I do a fine job with the back of a brush. So it is a possibility. Perhaps not the best choice. I would choose something different if I wanted. But can you use the back of the starter brush to apply your Astro Granite? Why, yes you can. You do not want to use the starter brush bristles for your Astro Granite because this has it's too gritty, and those grit pieces would get into the brush and it would be very hard to get them out. They'd quite likely ruin your brush. Scoop some of this out. Yes, the Astro Granite is supposed to be big and thick like that. Don't worry, most textures are much thicker paints just like that. And then when the Astro Granite has dried, I will be going back over each base's edge with a Abaddon black to make that edge of base nice and crispy clean. And here they are. So the Rune Lord Brass Necron, much the same as the art on the box. So if you had the question, can you get it to what it looks like on the box? Yes, I think I did a fine job at that. My choice to leave off the black was personal preference, but you could certainly add the black if you wanted. That is something you can do. Then I added the black Necron for fun. I enjoy how he turned out. I'd probably add a few more details with accent colors, but I like him as is. Definitely worth putting on the table as is. And then the silver one. Again, the silver one I'd probably go ahead and use Null Oil Gloss on him to really give him some shadows in all those crevices. But he looks pretty. He looks pretty good as is. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was quite useful to you. Go out there and paint some Necrons. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit that like and subscribe button if you did, and hit that bell notification if you want to know as soon as we put out our next video. Also, today is one of our patrons' birthdays, so happy birthday, Justin. I hope you're having a great one, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!